Hi, it's Lauren. Welcome back to my craft room. I'm really excited because I received a package from Ranger and Simon Hurley, and I got this actually yesterday. There was a slight mix up, but I was so excited to open up and see everything that I ended up spending most of the evening and into the night creating a few projects. So my video is a little later than planned, but I'm just happy to have something up for you to see all of the brand new products and just to check out everything that's new from Simon. So we have 4 new lunar pastes, 3 new stencils. One of them is a layering stencil. We have 2 rubber stamps that are for backgrounds or just big rubber stamps, and I have 3 of the new photopolymer stamp sets. So there are more from Simon Hurley, Ranger Ink, and they've also partnered with Spellbinders. So I'll have links down below in my description if you want to see the full and complete release, but these are the ones that I got. And I'm going to just kind of give you an overview of everything here. As you can see, I'm just kind of talking over everything, but I will use all of these different products over 4 different cards. I'm only going to share 1 card today on the video, but I will share over on my blog the other cards as the weeks go on using the brand new product. So I love that a lot of the stamp sets have coordinating dies, which just make life so easy to die cut out these adorable images. This one is called Floral Frames Framed Florals, and it does not have a die, but they have, pretty easy to cut out images. So I'm going to walk through the lunar paste. First, I'm going to use this brand new color. It's so vibrant blue and perfect for summer, and it's called No Diving. And it just gives like a water feel. So I thought it would be fun to use the new stencil called Warped Circles because I thought it gave a really fun bubble feel. So I thought it would be fun to partner this new stencil with this blue lunar paste. I'm going to start with distressing on some overzealous onto this white piece of cardstock that I trimmed down with my decal trimmer. And I didn't go, perfect on my ink blending by any means because a lot of it is going to be covered by this fun stencil. So once I get it lined up pretty much how I want it, I have it on top of my grip mat from scrapbook.com and then my magnetic glass board with my magnets to really just keep everything in place. And I'm just going to swipe this No Diving lunar paste across my cardstock. And it is so blue. I love it. I think it's going to be perfect, like I said, for the summer, for water, for undersea effects. And I think partnered with this overzealous green, it gives such a fun, like bright neon feel. I think this background turned out really pretty. So I'm going to go ahead and set that aside to dry. There's a lot of lunar paste on this background, so it's going to need a little time. I'm really excited for this new layering stencil set. This is 2 stencils in one, and it's called Geo Circles. And what I like about this is that you could use each stencil completely on their own or layer them together, and you can also adjust how you layer the stencils so you can come up with some really fun and unique backgrounds. I decided to just use it kind of how it is originally, I guess, intended to be used. So I'm starting with one of the layers, and I have some two-toned wood grain cardstock in a light gray, and so I'm using Piggyback to ink blend on some pink ink onto this soft gray background. And then I'm using the next stencil, and I'm going to use Guppy Lunar Paste, which is such a perfect orange for summer as well. It gives a very bright sunny day feel. And I'm going to grab my palette knife, and I'm just going to swipe that all along the background of these really pretty diamond design and pattern, which is again one of the layers of this set. And when you pull it up, I love this pink and orange combo. It feels very kind of springy, even though again very summer, but also very spring, having that more pastel pink in the mix. The last stencil that I received is the Deco Diamonds, which are so pretty. I feel like it gives a very 20s vibe, and I probably would do this with a gold or silver, but of course I want to check out the brand new lunar paste, so I'm actually going to use 2 on this one stencil. I'm using Rosy Cheeks, which I think is my favorite color from the new release. It's a very rose gold pink. Again, very pink, but rose gold feel. And then Crown Me, which is the perfect cool purple color. I am very team purple, and I think this color is so pretty. And then partnering it with Rosy Cheeks is going to make a really beautiful background. So I'm just taking amounts of my Rosy Cheeks Lunar Paste and kind of using my palette knife and just placing them in different sections, and the same with Crown Me, this purple color. Now Simon has done this technique a lot, and I do feel like I definitely put way too much paste on, but that's okay. We don't waste in the craft room, so I'm going to show you what I do after. But I'm just putting some paste all around the stencil and making sure that I go all the way to the top of the stencil. And then I'm going to use my large palette to just swipe down the color. So I'm going to be pressing gently, but also just swiping down the color down the stencil. And then anywhere where I see gaps, I'm just using my palette knives and some extra Lunar Paste. Why I didn't grab it from my, large palette here on the left, I don't know. But I filled in the gaps onto this black wood grain cardstock. So I'll go ahead and close up my Lunar Paste eventually, and then I am going to do another stencil reveal. And I love this design on the black cardstock, and I love the mixture of the two colors together. Again, it gives a very pretty spring combo. So I'm going to set that aside to dry, and I'm going to move aside my mess that I'm going to go clean right away in the sink. I put all my stencils into a soapy water tray in the bathroom, and then I'm going to swipe my scraper here onto some black cardstock that's just in my stash. And it's a little thick, so I'm going to keep kind of like scraping it down and spreading it down until I have a good coverage on this black cardstock, and I've used up all my Lunar Paste on my scraper. And I'll set that aside to dry, and I'll eventually use it to make some fun die cuts. So the stamp set that I'm going to use for my card sample that I will film and put in this video today is called Framed Florals. I really loved these daffodils, and I loved that it was kind of like a tall, skinny image. So I'm going to use my Misty to stamp it onto some watercolor cardstock, and I'm going to use VersaFine Clair ink in Rainforest so I can get a nice pretty green color. I decided to go with green because the leaves and stems of my daffodils were solid, and I thought having that in green would be really pretty. I end up stamping it, I believe, 2 or 3 times because there is a lot of texture on watercolor cardstock, and then I'll go ahead and clean my stamp, and I'm going to emboss it in some clear embossing powder because I'm going to be doing some watercoloring. So I'm going to grab my watercolor pencils from Ranger Ink and Tim Holtz. I really love them. I got all 3 sets. I wanted to wait until I felt like I was very confident with the coloring. I may not be the best at it, but feeling much more confident with them. So after one of my last videos, I went ahead and bought the other 2 sets. I just had the first one. And I'm just going to show you real quick some simple coloring with these watercolor pencils and a water brush pen. So I'm adding some of this yellow into my daffodils, and I'm only going to show one, but I just kind of squeeze a tiny bit of water out of my water brush pen and pick up the color directly from the pencil and then apply that to the image. Now I'm not squeezing my pen very much, if at all, when I'm adding color to my image. I'm only squeezing out a little bit when I'm picking up the color from the pencil because I don't want it to be completely oversaturated with water. I want my colors to really show up and be nice and vibrant for a watercolor. And then finally, I'm going to add a little bit of green just kind of to the bottom of the image. I really liked having the blue sky, but I thought the green fading into the blue would be really pretty. Like there was more, greenery behind those daffodils in this image. Now, I originally started trimming this image down with my trimmer, as you can see, but the lines are not perfectly straight lines. So I just grabbed some large scissors and I'm cutting around this rectangle because I just thought it would be easier since I was going to have to probably trim down most of it anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and finish trimming that out, and then we will distress this up and just kind of vintage grunge it up a little bit, which is not really my style. So I was very kind of proud of myself for stepping out of my normal comfort zone, I guess you could say, for my images. So I started with adding some distress ink and vintage photo around the edges, and then I went ahead and swiped the ink pad along the edges to darken them up a little bit more. And then now I'm taking some water and a small paintbrush, and I'm splattering on some of that vintage photo distress ink. And I think it just turned out so, so pretty. I am definitely going to do this with all of those floral images from this set. I think making some really fun vintage Mother's Day cards like this would be really pretty. I thought that the Guppy Lunar Paste would be perfect with this image, but I realized I didn't have any orange in my image, so I grabbed an orange pencil and just colored onto the center of those daffodils and used my finger to just kind of spread the color out a little bit. And then I was like, wait, I already did use Guppy on a very pretty background, but I didn't like the pink. I tried to like convince myself that it looked pretty and it was fine, but I wanted to darken it up. So I overlaid my stencil right back over where the pink is, and I'm just using that vintage photo again to add brown and cover up that piggyback color. So now that it's a little darker and it matches the vibe of my daffodils, I'm happy. I don't know if you saw my little happy hands there. I cleaned up my desk so I can start with figuring out how I wanted to cut down this background. So this image is pretty large. It measures about 2 inches by 5 1/4. So I knew I needed my background if I wanted it to show on all 4 sides around my image to be A2. So I'm grabbing my Tim Holtz decal trimmer, and I'm sorry for the shakes that I'm going to be doing while I'm cutting this because it is a thicker piece of paper and it has lunar paste on it, so I want to make sure it cuts nicely without ruining my background. So I'm going to be applying some pretty good pressure, and I'm trimming this down following the ruler on the top of the decal trimmer down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I love just the little kind of rough edges of this trimmer. I'm so happy I bought this. Again, I am a very clean A2 straight edge crafter. Everything needs to be symmetrical. So I'm really stepping out of my comfort zone with this card, but I am just really loving it. And like I said, I definitely plan on making more this style. I also inked up the edges with vintage photo, and I'm trying to flick on some color, but honestly, it's you just skip that part if you replicate this card because it does not show up at all. For my sentiment, I decided to grab the dies from one of the stamp sets. The inked blooms coordinating dies also have some great sentiments. So I'm going to be using thank you, and I'm using the words as well as the shadow die cuts. Now I want my sentiment to match my whole card. So I'm going to grab some craft cardstock, and I'm just dipping my finger into the Guppy Lunar Paste and spreading it onto this craft cardstock. And I'm going to use my little heat tool to dry this thin coat of Guppy onto this craft cardstock, and I'm going to use it when it's dry to cut out the shadow part of my thank you sentiment. Once that Guppy Lunar Paste is dry, I'm going to grab that same green ink that I used for my outline of my daffodil image, and I'm going to swipe that onto the craft cardstock as well. I'll use my heat gun to make sure it's dry, and that will be the word thank you, so they'll layer together perfectly. So just going to use some mint tape to keep those dies in place, and then I will run them on my magic mat through my Big Shot switch so they'll cut out very nicely and easily. And then I'll grab my glue with a fine point tip, which I use for everything, my art glitter glue. And I'm going to hold the sentiment with my tweezers, and then I will add on little dots of glue because this is a really tiny die cut. I probably should have used an adhesive like sheets. I always say this after the fact that I should use my adhesive sheets so I don't have to sit there and add little spots of glue. And then using my tweezers, I'll line that up onto the shadow die cut, and I have my thank, and then I will just repeat that same exact process for the U. And I love the dark green on the orange. I think it's matching this card just perfectly. I love that you could use Lunar Paste like this to create some nice shine onto your sentiments as well. So I'm figuring out that I like the daffodil in the center, and then the thank you that will be in the center of the card as well. So I'm going to use some foam adhesive to pop up my daffodil image. So I have my 2-inch roll from scrapbook.com, which worked perfectly on the back side of this image. And then I will trim off, there's a couple parts at the top that I think it's a little smaller than 2 inches just by the design of the stamp. So I'm just trimming off any foam I think that could be seen. And then I'm layering my sentiment. I kind of like it at an angle. I think it's just looking so pretty. So I grab my card base. This is a top folding A2 piece. And then I'm going to add some adhesive behind my background. And I'm just going to glue that right to the front of my card base. Then I'll peel off the release paper from my stamped and colored image, and I'm going to center that as best I can using my grid mat for a little help. And I will, again, just put that right in the middle. And then I'm going to grab some thin foam squares because I didn't want to add too much more bulk to my thank you. So I'm just going to kind of run through this real quick, just adding the U and then the thank again at kind of an angle and covering the bottom part of that image. I wanted to add a little bit of bling, but I didn't really think I needed much more shine. I do love shine on my cards. So I have these little water droplets. These are from Doodles Paper Playground, but you can also get something very similar from Pretty Pink Posh, so I have that linked down below. Here is a close-up of this adorable daffodil thank you card, again using the new framed florals, GeoCircle stencil, and Guppy Lunar Paste. This card sample uses the warped circles, no diving lunar paste, and the paint swatches Cling Mount rubber stamps. Here is how I used my Deco Diamonds background stencil with the Rosy Cheeks and Crown Me lunar paste. I partnered it with the Inked Bloom stamp set and dies. And my final card idea is using that super cute Spring Chicken stamp set, and I partnered it with the new Funky Chevron Peel Apart Rubber background stamp. I hope you enjoyed this little peek into the brand new release and that you enjoyed this daffodil thank you card. Make sure you're following me on Instagram and Facebook so you can see when I post details about my other cards. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!